What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Here's a quick synopsis. The four Ninja Turtles, Leo, Mikey, Dawn, and Raph, are tired of hiding in New York City when they meet April, a young reporter who is nice to them and wants to help them make a great impression on society. The film stars Nicholas Cantu, Micah Abbey, Brady Noon, Shannon Brown, Iowa Debris, Maya Rudolph, John Cena, Seth Rogen, Jackie Chan, Paul Rudd, and Ice Cube. Standout performances. The humor of the film really comes from the young stars Cantu, Abbey, Noon, and Brown, and while they may be virtual unknowns, they ended up being the perfect choice for the voices of the Turtles, and a lot has been made about how they are actual teens and not just grown men in costumes like in the past Ninja Turtles films. Of this franchise, they are authentically teens because they are teens themselves. I also think it makes sense not for them to be voiced by super well-known young actors. Like if the Turtles were voiced by the four kids from Stranger Things, I think it would have made for a weird movie. It makes sense to have them be voiced by virtual unknowns. Iowa Debris was a breakout star after season 1 of The Bear and has had a big 2023 with not only the second season of the show, but also with performances in the Comedy Theater Camp, a movie which I'll be talking about next week on the podcast. In Mutant Mayhem, she plays aspiring high school journalist April O'Neil, who, like the Turtles in the past films, has been an adult. And I think it was smart portraying her as a teen who doesn't fit in just like the Turtles. Debris really is a rising star. She has that movie Bottoms coming out soon with Rachel Sennett. It just feels like she's going to be a major force in movies for the next 10 to 15 years and however long and how many seasons The Bear goes on for. Ice Cube's acting career has always been interesting to me. He started out with critical hits Boys in the Hood and Free Kings, and then made the hit comedy Friday, and it's been hit or miss since. I don't like when he's trying to be a family actor with those really bad Are You There Yet movies. Those are bad. And every once in a while he reminds you he is a really good actor and a funny actor at that. I absolutely love him in Lord and Miller's 21 Jump Street films. He has great chemistry with both Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum. In Mutant Mayhem, he plays the original character Superfly, a mutant who wants to rid the world of humans. In my opinion, he does the best voice work the movie has to offer. He's incredible in this movie. He's a great voice acting villain. He's having a lot of fun. He's clearly having the time of his life voicing this character. And he's going a bit over the top, but it's super effective. Another great casting choice this movie has is Jackie Chan, who was the ideal guy to voice Master Splinter. I, like many, was a big fan of his work in the Rush Hour film Shanghai Noon and Nights, and he has done voice work in the past with the animated series Jackie Chan Adventures and the Kung Fu Panda movies. This is his first big movie in quite a long time, and I love living in a world where Jackie Chan is a big deal. I've always been a massive, massive fan. And finally, the last performance I want to talk about comes from Paul Rudd. It's been a while since Rudd was the absolute funniest thing in a movie, something he was regularly, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's in a Seth Rogen production. Rogen truly knows how to get the best out of Rudd. His performance in Mutant Mayhem, even though it's a vocal one, reminded me of his performance in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Absolutely no one is better at playing chill characters than Paul Rudd. And I started out being one of the biggest Paul Rudd guys after seeing him in the 40-year-old version, Knocked Up. I thought he was amazing. I always thought he was the funniest guy in every movie he was in. But I'll be honest, I've been down on him for a minute because of the Ant-Man movies. He's really good in the first Ant-Man, and he's really good in the second one. I haven't seen the third one. I'm just kind of over him being only Ant-Man. I want Paul Rudd in comedies, and then he was in Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I was expecting big things. Now, was I expecting too much? Did I think Paul Rudd was going to be like Bill Murray in Ghostbusters? Absolutely, and it didn't work out that way at all. He wasn't that memorable in the film, and maybe that's the fault of the film, but I was expecting Paul Rudd to deliver a signature Paul Rudd performance, and he didn't, but he did in Mutant Mayhem. I do believe this is a return to form for Paul Rudd being funny. I want Paul Rudd to be the funny guy. I don't think he has the potential to be a seriously great dramatic actor. I just want Paul Rudd to be the funniest thing in a movie, and I believe he is the funniest thing in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are clearly enormously popular, but their history in movies is far from perfection. The early films were known for the music from Vanilla Ice. It was really the animated series that people look back on fondly, and this film feels like an extension of that. I remember when Michael Bay was trying to reboot the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and try to make that like the Transformers films. They even put Megan Fox in those movies. I ignored those films altogether, and I've ignored most of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. And the biggest reason for that is the live action aspect. Like, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles do not make sense for live action. Again, you have some adults dressed up as some talking turtles. It never looks good. It just doesn't make for a good live action movie unless you were going to go fully CGI, and then I would think it would end up looking like nonsense. I think the only way that this franchise makes sense for the big screen is animation, and that's why this movie delivered for me, because of the animation style. Yes, it's getting some comparisons to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I can see some of those similarities, but this really does feel like an original animated film, like the originality of the animation. I love the style. It was super fun, it was super sleek, and it was fast-paced, which is exactly what you want from a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. I absolutely love where animation is headed. There have been some really good animated films recently. You had The Bad Guys, you have the Spider-Verse movies, you had Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. It feels like the best filmmakers are making animated films again. And I know that Disney is having a rough patch, but at some point they're going to come back with some great animated film. Animation has never been higher, in my opinion. And it's the animation in Mutant Mayhem that really stands tall. Like, if they had just done a regular animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie and it felt like it was made in 1998, I think that would have fallen flat. But this movie really works because it feels like something you've never seen before. It also feels like a comic book, which is how the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles originated. Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, co-writers of this film, are best known for making teen comedies. The first being the mega popular Superbad, and Rogen himself, of course, acted in Freaks and Geeks. One could be cynical and say, instead of making original work about a group of teens, Rogen is now forced to make one about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I will say this, when you watch this movie, you can tell that Seth Rogen and whoever made this film loves the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is something you can tell from the get-go, that the people who made this movie care about this movie, and that's always been a problem in Hollywood, is that they make movies about big comic book franchises, and you can tell the minute you watch it, these people have no interest in what they're making. They just want to make a boatload of money. This didn't feel like a cash grab at all, and I think some of the past Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films have felt like an absolute cash grab. Let's just make this movie so we can make a buck. That's not what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mayhem is. It's a movie made by people who love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Here's what Seth Rogen himself told Entertainment Tonight about his love of the Turtles. Quote, "I was really the target audience for the first iteration of all this stuff. My dad bought like a big box of used Ninja Turtle toys at a garage sale when I was a kid, and so I had those and I played with them so much." I do want to talk more about Seth Rogen because I think his career career is in an interesting place because for the longest time, he felt like he was doing his own thing. He was making movies like Knocked Up, Superbad, and Pineapple Express. He was his own machine. Then he tried to make a super popular comic book film, The Green Hornet, which is not very good, but isn't as bad as people claim that it is. And that movie didn't work out, and then he went back to making his own films. But now it feels like he's back in mainstream media. I mean, this year alone, he was in the Super Mario Brothers movie as Donkey Kong. No, he didn't co-write that movie, but he plays a big part in that film, and now he's in and co-wrote Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And in the last few years, he also voiced Pumbaa in The Lion King. Like, Seth Rogen has become kind of mainstream in a way I never thought was going to happen. I always thought he was always going to be popular in his own thing, but now he has merged with mainstream movies, and I think it's a good thing because I think he really does fit these kind of films. His participation in these kind of movies makes me think that there is a future where maybe he ends up being in a Marvel movie. Now, could he be in the Fantastic Four as Ben Grimm, the Thing? I would love that casting. Like, I think Seth Rogen would crush that role because Ben Grimm has been so boring in all of the Fantastic Four movies. To get an actor that good would be incredible. Now, I think it's a long shot, but I do believe it would be perfect casting choice. Let's talk about this movie's box office results. Now, as I record this, the film has made $137 million, which makes it a modest hit. But it's not a massive hit. Like, this hasn't become the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I don't think anyone thought it would be the Super Mario Brothers movie. I just don't think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are as popular as Mario because I don't think that they have stood the test of time. Like, I think there are so many kids out there that have no relationship to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I know they continue to make video games. I know they continue to make comic books about them. I know there's occasionally television shows, but I think that the height of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles truly was in the 1990s, where I think things were more silly, where you could watch a show about 4 talking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think those days are kind of gone, and that's why I think the Transformers are having people lose interest in them. Like, I just think those kind of things aren't as popular as they used to. It's the same with G.I. Joe. Kids aren't playing with toys anymore. Kids aren't reading comic books anymore. They are on their iPads. They are doing other things. They are not as invested in the kinds of things I was as a kid, where I was into things like Digimon, Beyblade, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Dragon Ball Z. Kids aren't as invested in these kind of things, at least the majority. Like, I feel like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have become more of a niche thing, where back in the day, they were a mainstream big deal thing. You could talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with everyone and they know what you're talking about. Now when you talk to a kid, yeah, they know what you're talking about, but they don't really know the history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's not a relationship there. The games aren't thriving. I don't know the comic book sales of anything anymore. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are clearly not as popular as they used to be. The original live-action film back in 1990 made $202 million at the box office. That's $70 million more than Mutant Mayhem. So clearly, the popularity hasn't risen for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and in my opinion, has declined. Whereas something like Mario has stayed in the mainstream for as long as popular. Every single kid I know is playing a Super Mario Brothers video game. They know what you're talking about. It is still in the language. It is still as popular as ever, and that's just not the case with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, that's not a bad thing. It just won't ever make these movies massive hits like they would have been. That's what's so kind of sad about this. The perfect time for a great Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was the 1990s, and instead we got something kind of crummy, that feels like an artifact that nobody really wants to revisit. Like, those movies are silly. I don't really want to watch them. If you were a fan of them as a kid, you're probably not that proud of them anymore. And this might be weird to say, but I also just think in the 1990s and the early 2000s, audiences were better at suspending logic. Now when you watch a movie like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, everything needs to be explained. How were they mutated? And I think this movie does a really good job of making fun of the backstory of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I also think it's forced to take itself seriously because audiences need everything to be explained. Whereas in the 90s, you could just watch a movie about 4 talking turtles and not think a second about it. You could just enjoy the movie and be done with it. I don't think we're living in those days anymore. Every movie is examined from beginning to end, and I think that's why the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are a weird fit for where we are as a society when it comes to movies. That's why I think, weirdly, they do work better as a comic book. They do work better as a TV show. As a movie, it's hard to make the great Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Now, they've done it with Mutant Mayhem, but can they continue to do it? I have serious doubts about that, and I do believe this movie will get a sequel. And this movie hinted that they're going to bring in the longtime bad guy for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Shredder. I love the Shredder when I was growing up. He was a great villain. Can he work in this kind of movie? I think so. I want the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to have quality films, but I also feel like there's only so much you can do before you're tired of watching a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Overall, I said this about Barbie a few weeks ago. Like, I felt like Barbie was the absolute best movie you could make about the subject of Barbie. And I feel the exact same way about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. This is the best possible Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie you could make. It was funny. It didn't take itself seriously. It made fun of itself. It had really fun movie star voices again. I loved Paul Rudd in this. I love that Jackie Chan and Ice Cube were able to showcase that they're still really good in movies. It's been a while for both of them. One thought I had after watching this movie is I'm thinking, could the Oscars actually nominate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem for Best Animated Feature? Now, I don't see that happening. I think the Oscars are really good when it comes to nominating animated films. And I weirdly think this movie is better than the Super Mario Brothers movie. But I think the insane popularity of the Super Mario Brothers film will get that film nominated. And I think one of the films that won't make it is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Now, do I believe it's one of the 5 best animated films I've seen this year? Absolutely. But I think it's a big reach to think that the Academy is going to vote for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Like, they're just going to think about the past of this franchise and go, we want nothing to do with them. I really do feel like the Academy isn't going to vote for this movie because it's a movie about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. With this and the Spider-Verse films, my feeling on comic book movies now is that most of them probably should be animated. They just make way more sense animated, especially now with all of the Marvel movies being made with a ridiculous amount of CGI, and you can tell that none of the actors are in the same room. Like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem felt more alive than any recent Marvel film. And the same with the Spider-Verse. Like, the acting performances, the look of the movie, it looks fantastic. Spider-Verse and Mutant Mayhem, they are better looking than most comic book movies. I would love to see the 90s X-Men animated show turned into an animated movie. That's something I would love to see because I just think animation is so good when it comes to making something feel like a comic book, which is what Marvel and DC movies are trying to do, but because it's live action, it always feels kind of clunky, especially when it comes to the logic. Like, again, you just don't suspend your your belief when you're watching a real-life person in a ridiculous situation as a superhero fighting a supervillain. But when you're watching an animated movie like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, you're willing to suspend that belief a little bit, even though I feel like a majority of people won't. I'm better at it when I'm watching an animated movie. I live the movie. I understand what's going on. I don't go, oh, well, that acting performance isn't very good, or I can tell those two people aren't in the same room. I don't nitpick when it comes to animation. I want more comic book films to be animated. I'm super pumped that they're going to do a Transformers animated film because the live action movies have gotten old. I want to see animated films of beloved 90s comic books or 90s animated shows. I was pretty much done with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but Mutant Mayhem has won me back. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and I highly, highly recommend you check out the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about the movie Theater Camp, starring Molly Gordon, Ben Platt, Jimmy Tatro, and Iowa Debris. So tune into that, and please rate, review, and subscribe.